Hello, friends. So today, 12th May 2023, is an International Nurses Day. So the theme for today is Our Nurses, Our Future. So I thought I'll make a very brief video on nursing philately. So I'll just take you through glimpses of how the nurses are commemorated in the world of philatelic history. So just to give an understanding as to what is medical philately, I think many of the listeners may know that I'm a medical philatelist. So medical philately is constructing or dwelling into the history of medicine using stamp or the postage stamp as a window through which we explore the history of medicine. So it's a unique hobby. So there are about 200 recognized medical philatelists worldwide. So I'm one of the member of American Philatelic Society. So this is my passion for last maybe 30 years. So what is it? So I've already said we dwell into the history of medicine using postage stamp as a window, and we collect stamps and we dwell into the history. So now the question is, who is generally commemorated? Anybody or anyone who has contributed significantly in the field of medicine or historic events, memorable events, inventions in medicine, all these are commemorated. So basically, a stamp gives you a lot of insight onto the important events, important people who have made significant contribution to the field of medicine and health. So here I am to dwell into how nurses have been commemorated on the stamps. So now the question arises. So if you take the into the world of philately, so one would imagine whether nurses are commemorated more or doctors are commemorated more. So if you look cumulatively, I would think it is the nurses who are commemorated more on the postage stamps than the doctors. So it just goes on to show how important their role is in the healthcare and evolution of healthcare. And which country commemorates? Literally any country in the world would have, every country in the world or any country in the world would have commemorated at least one postage stamp on the nurses. So that is the importance of how nurses remain the backbone of healthcare of any nation. So has India commemorated? We look into it. Yes, India has commemorated nurses and nurses are depicted on the stamps. So if you look at it, so when we dwell into the history of stamps, we basically have to determine in which year the stamp was issued, which country did it issue, and why was it issued, and what is being depicted on the stamp. So if you see this particular stamp, it is fairly intuitive. Australia has released this stamp and it has commemorated Florence Nightingale. So the International Nurses Day is to commemorate the birth anniversary of Florence Nightingale, and which we all know is a lady with a lamp. So this stamp, as you see, was issued in 1955 by Australia, and she has contributed immensely into the evolution of healthcare. That's why she's commemorated by various countries on the stamps. And the International Nurses Day is also dedicated to her birth anniversary. So she's the first person who has made a historical documentation of entity of quality in healthcare. And she was the first who did a statistical recording of mortality in 19th century Crimean Wars. Until then, the whole concept of statistical collation of data did not happen by a doctor, but it happened by a nurse in a systematic way, and that was Florence Nightingale. So that is so that's the sort of a revolution that she created in the healthcare. As you see, this is another stamp which was issued by United Kingdom in 1970, and you see it is to commemorate Florence Nightingale. And she was called Lady with the Lamp. She was born on 12th May 1820, and she passed away on 13th August 1910. And as I've already mentioned, she was the first one in Crimean War where she actively did her service as a nursing. She systematically recorded as to how good nursing can reduce mortality from 40% to 2% by good monitoring of the patient and by giving good hygienic nursing care. And she was the one who put in place the concept of polar diagram in sort of visual recording of statistics. So all the statistics was visually represented using polar diagram, and she gets the credit of using this polar diagram, which is typically used in navigation of ships. She used this to depict or illustrate statistic in a figurative way or in a schematic way. So that is the sort of contribution she did, and she was the first one who sort of evolved the concept of indicating the numbers with graphs and charts and so on and so forth. So that is the important contribution of Florence Nightingale. And she also paid a lot of emphasis and attention to compassionate care of unwell patients. So in Crimean War, she was in charge of the hospital which took care of critically ill unwell patients, and she also imparted the whole concept of administrative skills in the nursing and the importance of record keeping even today, which is so much relevant for the nurses. Record keeping, administrative skills for the nurses, most in intensive care, and compassionate care in the ICU, which is also integral and form the core of principles of ICU management. Even today is relevant, which was demonstrated way back in 18th century by Florence Nightingale. And she was the first woman who was awarded Royal Red Cross in 1807, and she was the first woman to be awarded the Order of Merit in UK. So that is the importance that she's garnered with her immense contribution to the healthcare. And to as a memory, so they have a Florence Nightingale Museum in London. So this is the brief about how much she has contributed to the evolution of today's healthcare. So these are some of the stamps. As you see, this stamp is issued by Austria in 1997, again giving importance to the role of nurses in the healthcare, where nurse is shown giving compassionate care to a patient. And this was a stamp released by Finland in 1998 to commemorate the centenary of Finnish Federation of Nurses. So we'll move on. So I'll only talk about three important nurses on this nursing day. So the second one is Clara Harlan Barton. She was a United States nurse. As you see, she was born in 1821. So this stamp is issued to commemorate Clara Barton, and the stamp is issued by USA in 1948. So all these stamps are from my collection. And she was the organizer and president of American Red Cross, and she's the founder of American Red Cross. So you can see how nurses have played significant role in the development and evolution of healthcare. And then this is a nurse who was the founder of the American Red Cross, and she was the president of American Red Cross. And she was given the title Angel of Battlefield, and she served in Franco-Prussian War in 1870. So we'll move on to the third nurse who is commemorated on a stamp is Clara Louise Mars. Again, she's from US, and the 1976. This is the stamp issued by USA. So she has made immense contribution to identification of the causative agent of yellow fever. So at that point of time, there was a controversy whether tropical fever is caused by the filth or it is transmitted by the mosquito Aedes aegypti. So she did a careful recording of 7 patients and came to the conclusion that it was the mosquito which transmitted the yellow fever. And the sad story is she died during her course of observation of these 7 patients and coming to a conclusion that it was the mosquito which transmitted the yellow fever. So she was the most courageous nurse who lost her life during scientific studies that involved the determination of causative agent of yellow fever. And Clara Mars died at a very young age of yellow fever at the age of 25. And the Newark General Hospital in USA was renamed Clara Mars Memorial Hospital. So these are some of the other stamps that are issued by USA. So this is a stamp again commemorating the nurses. And this stamp is issued in 1962, where a nurse is shown lighting candle of education. And this was another stamp issued by USA in 1981 to commemorate centenary of American Red Cross, again depicting the nurse feeding the child. So as you see, any big or small country have commemorated nurses on their stamps, indicating or signifying very important pivotal role in chartering the healthcare in their nation. So Australia also, because I stayed in Australia for around 7 years, so it is important I do show you some stamps on Australia. So this particular stamp, which was called Millennium Series, 2000, they issued this stamp as Face of Australia. So you can just imagine the sort of importance and the weightage that is given to a nurse as the face of Australia, and this was a Mary Simmons, was a retired nurse, which was depicted on the Australian stamp in 2000, where they issued a series of stamps to commemorate the new millennium, and they commemorated this nurse as a face of Australia. And when I went to Australia, this was the first set that I got. This is a reasonably pricey or an expensive set of stamps, which was issued in 1940 by Australia. And if you see, there are armed forces of Navy, Air Force, and Army, which are depicted here, showing how important are they to the nation. And on top of it, there is a figurative of a nurse showing how important is nurse for their nation. So this really shows and signifies the value and the importance of nurses for a nation, where they have placed above the pedestal of the defense forces. So that is the sort of importance countries have given to the nurses. And it is important that we are sensitized to their role in healthcare on this International Nurses Day. And this is a stamp again issued by Australia in 1962 to commemorate 50th anniversary of Australian Inland Mission. And this was to commemorate Royal Flying Doctor Service. And this was the, as you see, the stamp shows the grave of Flynn, John Flynn, who was the founder of Royal Flying Doctor Service. And there is a nursing sister. So again, it goes on to show the importance they have tried to correlate of a very important dimension in their healthcare, which is Royal Flying Doctor Service, which caters to the remotest area of the Australia, and they have connected this to how important nurses also have played in this Australian inland mission. And this is another stamp again issued by Australia in 1985 to commemorate centenary of District Nursing Service, and this is the picture depicting how the nurses in early 1900s in Australia looked. So just to show you certain glimpses of how nurses are commemorated on stamps in the postal history across the world. So, and India is not very far. So India has commemorated two stamps. So this is a 1958 stamp issued by India to commemorate Children's Day, where a nurse is depicted on the stamp. And this is a stamp issued in 1970 by India to commemorate 50th anniversary of Indian Red Cross. So just to end my slide, so just showing few other stamps that has come from Poland. So this is the 1983 issued by Poland to commemorate 8th Congress of Polish Nurses Association. And Poland has issued another stamp in 1977 to commemorate Polish Red Cross. So basically, I have a big collection of nurses. I've just selected few of them, especially to highlight three nurses who have played a very significant role. So obviously one is the Florence Nightingale. Second is Clara Burton, who founded the American Red Cross. And the third is Clara Moss, who discovered the positive or agent which transmits the yellow fever. And she died in the course of her investigation to determine the causative agent or transmitting agent of yellow fever. So thank you one and all. So I wish on 12th May, every nurse a happy Nurses Day. Your caring ways bring a smile to those you help, and you are truly appreciated. So thank you one and all.